No one knew her name. She came before the sunrise and left before the doors opened. A small woman, worn with age and silence, carrying a plastic bucket in one hand and an old mop in the other. Her clothes were plain. Her shoes faded sneakers held together with glue. No makeup, no jewelry, no presents to demand attention. But every week, like clockwork, she came to the church and cleaned. 15 years. Every Saturday morning. Rain or shine, she dusted the pews. She swept the floor. She wiped the altar rails. She cleaned the bathroom stalls. She refilled the toilet paper rolls, lined the trash cans, and scrubbed the baseboards most people never even noticed. No one ever asked her to. She never said why. The pastors changed. The choir changed. The congregation changed. But she remained. Always in the background. Always in the shadows. Some called her the cleaning lady. Some forgot she existed at all. Her name was Miriam. But no one called her that anymore. Not since her husband left. Not since her daughter stopped speaking to her. Not since the world grew cold and quiet and cruel. The church was the only place that didn't ask her for anything. So she gave it everything. And for 15 years, she poured her brokenness into that building. Into every polished doorknob. Into every folded hymn book. Into every shining tile. But no one saw the pain in her eyes. No one knew the scream she swallowed. No one knew the guilt that chased her from every dream. Until one ordinary Saturday. She had just finished wiping the communion table. Her knees ached. Her back throbbed. Her fingers trembled with age and arthritis. And then she sat in the back pew. Just for a moment. Just to breathe. And for the first time in years, she closed her eyes and whispered, "God, why do I still hurt?" She didn't expect an answer. She never had. But this time, the silence felt different. Heavy. Holy. And Miriam began to cry. Not quiet tears. Not polite sobs, but guttural weeping. The kind that had been locked behind her ribs for too long. She wept for the daughter she hadn't held in 20 years. She wept for the man who left her without a goodbye. She wept for the decisions she couldn't undo, for the shame she wore like skin. And somewhere in the middle of her sobs, a light shifted. No doors opened. No voices spoke. But in that sanctuary, she felt something wrap around her. Like arms that weren't there. Like warmth that defied explanation. She collapsed forward on the pew and whispered, "I'm sorry." And a voice, not outside but within, replied, "I know. I never stopped loving you." The words hung in the air like incense. Miriam froze. She didn't imagine it. She didn't fabricate it. It wasn't some echo in her memory. The voice had been real, not in her ears, but in her soul. It was soft, steady, gentle, like the hum of an old hymn sung from the back of the church. "I never stopped loving you." She hadn't heard those words in decades. Not since her mother had passed. Not since the world fell apart. And in that moment, on the dusty wooden pew of a church where she had labored in silence, Miriam broke. Not in the way people fall apart, but in the way that pottery breaks to be remade. She knelt. Not to scrub. Not to polish, but to surrender. Years of bitterness poured out. Years of shame, regret, rage. Loneliness spilled from her like oil from a shattered jar. God received it all. Not with condemnation, not with punishment, but with arms she couldn't see and a presence she couldn't deny. That Saturday, Miriam left the church without sweeping the floor. For the first time in 15 years, she didn't finish her list. Instead, she walked outside, face streaked with tears, hands trembling. She looked at the sky. And whispered, "Thank you." The next week, she returned, but something was different. Her steps were lighter, her eyes clearer. She cleaned. Yes, but she also sat. She began to arrive earlier. And leave later. She started attending Sunday services. She hadn't done that in years. Not since the split. Not since the shame. Not since the gossip whispered behind her back. But now, none of that held power, because she had heard the only voice that mattered. She sat in the second row, not in the shadows, and listened to the word. Each sermon peeled away another layer of grief. Each song felt like balm on a wound she thought would never close. She joined the prayer circle. At first, she said nothing. Just listened. Then one day, she spoke. "I'm Miriam," she said. "And I think God spoke to me." The group was silent. Then someone smiled, then another. Then someone wept. A woman whispered, "He spoke to me once too." From that day, Miriam was no longer the cleaning lady. She was a sister, a testimony, a living proof that no one is too far, too lost, too broken. She shared her story in women's group. Then in small Bible study. Then one Sunday, the pastor asked. She would share it before the whole church. Her hands trembled as she stood at the pulpit, but her voice was steady. She told them everything. The pain, the silence, the moment in the back pew. The voice. "I thought I was serving God by cleaning his house," she said. "But really, he was waiting to clean mine." There wasn't a dry eye in the building. Even the organist wept. After that day, more people noticed Miriam. Not just her work, but her warmth, her laughter, her hugs, her wisdom. She no longer walked in unnoticed. She walked in as a daughter. Redeemed. Loved. Whole. Years passed. Miriam grew older. Her hands, once firm with routine, began to tremble more. Her knees weakened. Her steps slowed. But her spirit, her joy never faded. She still came every Saturday. Not always to clean. Sometimes just to sit. Sometimes just to pray. Sometimes just to hold someone else's hand and say, "He healed me. He'll heal you too." One day, she brought a young girl with her, a girl from the shelter, barely 17, angry, alone, just like Miriam once was. They sat in the last pew, and Miriam whispered, "I used to cry here." Then God spoke. The girl said nothing, but she came back the next week, and the week after. Soon, Miriam wasn't alone in her service. The young girl helped her wipe windows, fill cups, organize hymnals, pray. When someone asked Miriam what she was doing, she smiled and said, "Planting seeds." Miriam never preached on a stage, never wrote a book, never made a headline, but every soul she touched carried a piece of heaven with them. Then came the winter. It was a cold morning when the pastor walked into the church and found a note on the communion table. It was from Miriam. Written in shaky handwriting. "To my church family, thank you for seeing me. Thank you for letting me see him. I'm going home now. Not to my apartment, but to the place I was always cleaning for. I'll save you a seat in the second row. With love, Miriam." They found her in her sleep, peaceful, Bible by her side. At her funeral, there was no room left in the church. The aisles were full, the pews overflowing. Former pastors returned. Members from years ago came back. The young girl, now a grown woman, stood and read Psalm 84. "Better is one day in your courts than 1,000 elsewhere." Then she added, "She didn't just clean this house, she loved it. And through her, God loved us." That Sunday, the church dedicated a small plaque on the back pew. It read, ****, in memory of Miriam, she heard his voice here." And beneath it, etched in small letters, "I never stopped loving you." ****. Years later, strangers still ask, "Who was Miriam?" And the people smile. "She was a cleaning lady." Someone says, "She was a saint." Says another, "She was the quiet voice that taught us what grace looks like." Says one more. And in heaven, perhaps there's a golden hallway, glistening floors, and a small woman walking through it with quiet joy. Not cleaning anymore. Just shining. Just home. If you've ever served in silence, if you've ever wondered if God sees your faithfulness, let Miriam's story remind you. He sees, he hears, he knows, and he never stops loving you. If this story moved you, please like, share, and subscribe for more real stories of hope and grace. Someone you know may be silently serving, waiting for a whisper from heaven. Be the reminder. Be the voice.